So we're here today with Robert Connell Clarke, cannabis researcher. So Rob, tell me how you first got involved with cannabis research.
I first became acquainted with cannabis right here in the Redwoods at the University of California at Santa Cruz in 1971. I arrived as a freshman, went to a Stevenson College dorm mixer and smoked marijuana for the first time. Basically, we've been allied ever since.
Did you do any more research or investigating of cannabis while you were there?
Yes, my University of California at Santa Cruz career was quite interesting. I spent an awful lot of time at Winterland in San Francisco doing other recreational
Research.
yes, of sorts. But eventually I had to graduate, and I followed my father's advice that to do what I enjoyed in life because I might likely be successful at it. So I was enjoying my cannabis experiences, and I wrote a dissertation for an undergraduate dissertation entitled The Botany and Ecology of Cannabis. And I managed to graduate with a bachelor's degree in science.
What became of that dissertation?
It eventually was self-published, sold 1,500 copies of it. This was even before desktop publishing. And that eventually morphed into my first real book with an established publisher. That was Marijuana Botany. So from 76, when Botany and Ecology of Cannabis came out, to 1981, we developed Marijuana Botany.
And after that, where did you go?
I worked in the nursery business in Watsonville for a while, and then went back to school, graduate school at Indiana University in the laboratory of Paul Malberg. And I didn't finish at Indiana. I developed a master's thesis, which was used later on in other publications, which we'll speak about. But I ran off with the circus, basically, and ended up in Amsterdam.
And what went on in Amsterdam?
I worked with a group called Hortifarm, and we were an agricultural development company, basically working on improved cannabis varieties for medical use, as well as hemp and seed varieties, what are more recently known as industrial hemp varieties.
And I understand you also got involved in hashish research a little bit?
When I moved to Europe, I was fascinated by the hashish culture there. We all grew up in a marijuana culture here in America, and we knew what hashish was, but it really wasn't our mainstay cannabis drug. When you get to Europe, you see a completely different picture. They relied on hashish and very rarely had marijuana. Marijuana being mostly a New World phenomenon and hashish being an Old World phenomenon. It goes back to the history of the two crops. So I found hashish culture fascinating. I interviewed a lot of people and learned a lot, and ended up writing a book, Hashish, which came out in 1998.
And you were also involved in some breeding projects, is that right? And some biocontrol research?
Mm-hmm. What Hortifarm did was twofold, really. We developed drug varieties, THC-rich and CBD-rich varieties, which were licensed eventually to GW Pharmaceuticals in the United Kingdom. And they use these varieties to grow the cannabinoids they use in their Sativex and other products that they'll be releasing. When working with cannabis, both in the greenhouse in Amsterdam and also hemp breeding projects that I carried out in Hungary and Russia and China and Vietnam, you run into lots of pests. Anyone who grows indoors or in a greenhouse knows that you create an environment that's favorable for pests as well as your crop. And working with a crop that was ultimately to be consumed by humans, we were very careful not to use pesticides. So this led to the use of biocontrols. And based on our firsthand experience with biocontrols, especially the experience of David Watson in the greenhouses in Hortifarm greenhouses in Amsterdam, and my varied contact with different exotic pests around the world, we combined forces with John McPartland, who's the leading researcher of cannabis pests, largely fungal pests is his expertise, but all the pests of cannabis. And he asked us to help him do his book, Hemp Diseases and Pests, which was published by Oxford University Press.
Great. And you've also been doing some field work, I understand.
Yes, most recently when I was working in these different countries on breeding projects, I also spent a lot of time looking into the local hemp cultures. And I found, beginning in China, but also in Southeast Asia and across the Himalayan foothills to Nepal, lots of relict hemp weaving cultures. They're still there. They're not common. You have to look hard for them. But I found this of great interest, so I started collecting their textiles. And most recently, I have found a hemp weaving tradition in Turkey, which I was previously unaware of. So the last 3 or 4 years, I've been exploring in Anatolia and collecting hemp textiles there. And I hope that both these collections, the Asian collection as well as the Anatolian collections, will be museum-type, collection-type books for the future. We'll see how that goes.
And I understand you've got a new book that's out, right?
Oh yeah, have a new labor of love here. This is a tandem effort with Mark Merlin, University of Hawaii. He's been a professor in many disciplines there, but presently a biology professor. Mark is an ethnobotanist and geographer as well, and he's taken a long look at cannabis. When I first went to the library at UCSC to work on my undergraduate dissertation, the first book I found was Mark Merlin's Man and Marijuana, which he had published after writing his master's dissertation on the subject at University of California at Santa Barbara. So I was able to hold this up as a good reason, good rationale for me doing an undergraduate dissertation at UC Santa Cruz. Mark and I have partnered up. We started this book, Cannabis, Evolution, and Ethnobotany, published by University of California Press, which makes perfect sense knowing our history. We worked 17 years on this book. We began at a Society for Economic Botany meeting in London many years ago. And if we'd known it would take 17 years to finish it, we probably wouldn't have started, but luckily we deluded ourselves, and here's the book. It's a reference book. It's academic. It's cited. There are only over 700 citations in this in the bibliography. It's took a long time to research because cannabis is a huge subject. It's been used for 10,000 years by every major Eurasian culture at least, and for many uses. So this is a reference book. We set it up so you can find a chapter about any particular interest you might have, whether it's seed, fiber, drugs, ritual, whatever. So give it a go. It's a good read, and it's got a lot of really valuable information. So we hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Rob, and we'll get a little more into some of these other topics in future talks.
We certainly will, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you.